Hi, I'm Pastor Steve on this Saturday edition of The Path to the Cross. And now we're at the garden tomb on the outside. Matthew 27, verses 62 through 66 is our text today. And you'll notice on the timeline, after the earthquake and after the soldier pierces Jesus' side, he is dead already before that, and Joseph of Arimathea asks Pilate for the body of Jesus. His body is placed in the garden tomb. It was a borrowed tomb, and the guards are posted at the tomb. That's what we'll be looking at today. That's really the only event that we know of, is that there were guards outside of the tomb on this day. And Jesus' body was wrapped and buried the day before. Here's kind of a rendering of that. And here are some images of the garden tomb. And so this would have belonged to Joseph of Arimathea. It was a garden area. There's a house not too far away, a press for grapes and also for olives were found at this. So it was the property of a wealthy individual. And you can see the people there looking at the side of the hill that's carved out. And a little sign there says the garden tomb. There's another picture. You can kind of see the image there. So our scriptures, Matthew 27, beginning in verse 62. Now the next day that followed, the day of the preparation, the chief priests and the Pharisees came together unto Pilate, saying, Sir, we remember that the deceiver said, while he was yet alive, after 3 days I will rise again. Now, Jesus said, I counted at least 10 times, maybe more throughout the Gospels, that he would rise again. Matthew 16:21 is an example of that. From that time forth began Jesus to show unto his disciples how that he must go into Jerusalem and suffer many things of the elders and chief priests and scribes, and be killed and be raised again the third day. Now, this location of the garden tomb is less than a third of a mile away from Golgotha. It's on the same hillside, the same little mountain, if you would. Two observations about this. Jesus was completely dead, and the religious leaders were completely satisfied that he was dead. And so they want to prevent any suggestion that Jesus has come back to life. Now, everyone also, they knew the exact location of the garden tomb. There was no mistaking the location. The religious leaders, Pilate, the soldiers, Caiaphas, the disciples, all the other spectators of the crucifixion could validate the very location where Jesus was buried. So with that in mind, those two ideas, let's continue. Verse 64. Command therefore that the sepulchre be made sure unto the third day, lest his disciples come by night and steal him away, and say unto the people, He is risen from the dead. So the last error shall be worse than the first. They said it'd be worse if he came back to life than if he was still alive today. And that's what they were suggesting with that. The religious leaders took Jesus' resurrection claims more seriously than the disciples did. The disciples didn't remember Jesus' teaching about the resurrection. You could read that in Matthew 20, verses 17 through 19. But the religious leaders did. Because of his claims, they were almost as afraid of Jesus after his death as when he was alive. They tried to take every precaution that his body would remain in the tomb. Continuing on then, verse 65 and 66, Pilate said unto them, Ye have a watch, go your way, make it as sure as ye can. So they went and made the sepulchre sure, sealing the stone and setting a watch. In the Old Testament, there's another man who is sealed up, if you would. That's Daniel, a type of Christ, who experienced a similar seal. In Daniel 6, verse 17, a stone was brought and laid upon the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet, and with the signet of his lords, that the purpose might not be changed concerning Daniel, so that Daniel could not get out. No one could rescue him from being in the lion's den. So then they would have used either wax or clay. wax or clay, signet ring stamped into that with a cord on either side of the stone. Now, because this stone, the tomb was hewn out of this stone, this rock in the side of a hill, there was only one entrance. The tomb was sealed by stringing a cord across the stone that was rolled over the entrance. The cord was sealed on each end with clay. But the religious leaders took a further precaution, asking that guards be placed at the tomb's entrance. With such precautions, the only way for the tomb to be empty would be for Jesus to rise from the dead. I think of 1 Corinthians 15, verses 20 and 21. But now is Christ risen from the dead, and become the firstfruits of them that slept. For since by man came death, by man came also the resurrection of the dead. Let me ask you a couple questions as we conclude today. Would you have believed in the resurrection before it happened? Jesus was teaching about it. His disciples forgot. The priests were afraid it really was going to happen, so they wanted to prevent this. Then here's a more relevant question. Do you believe in the resurrection today? Do you believe that Jesus is alive? Do you look forward to a resurrection of the saints, of believers? It's called the rapture. Do you believe in a resurrection today? So for today, this Saturday edition of the Path to the Cross, guards, soldiers are posted at the tomb. And so Saturday's reading outside the garden tomb is Matthew 27, verses 62 through 66. There's something amazing going to happen tomorrow. I hope you'll tune in to find out as we continue to follow this epic journey to the cross and now post-cross. There's something amazing that happens. And so I hope to see you here tomorrow for the next and final session. God bless. Thank you for watching.